Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the life of Julius Caesar.
Ooh, Caesar.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Um, we're using sources written in Spanish.
Interesting.
Yeah, to uncover maybe a new perspective on him. Forget that basic conqueror of Gaul stuff we all know. We're
Right.
going deeper.
Like beyond the surface.
Exactly, to understand the actual man, you know.
I mean, it's interesting how even something as basic as his birth year is uncertain.
Oh yeah.
100 BC? Or was it 102 BC?
Huh. So, right from the start, there's mystery.
Right.
And that's what I want to get into. Was he just this power-hungry tyrant?
Some people think so for sure.
Or was he, a visionary leader who actually wanted good things for Rome?
It's tricky.
Maybe the answer's somewhere in the middle, right?
Well, to try to figure that out, we got to go way back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning.
Now, Caesar wasn't some nobody, who came from nothing.
Right.
He was born a patrician, like top-tier Roman elite.
Got it. So privileged.
Yeah. But even with that, his early life wasn't easy.
Well, I mean, his dad died when he was only 16.
You're really young.
So suddenly he's head of the family.
Huge responsibility for a teenager.
Totally. And then there's that whole pirate thing.
Oh, right, the pirate.
He gets captured, right? But instead of begging to be freed, he tells them to raise the ransom.
Unbelievable.
I'm worth more.
He really had that confidence.
Right. Never underestimate it.
Not even by pirates.
But then the best part, once he's free, what does he do? Hunts those pirates down and has them crucified.
Wow. Talk about holding a grudge.
Right. Maybe a little extreme, but you gotta admire the guy's determination.
Caesar was driven,
For sure. And that drive, we see it throughout his whole life.
pushing him to be the best at everything he did.
Exactly. Military tribune, then questor, then aedile. He keeps rising through the ranks.
Honing his skills.
Yeah. And people are noticing he's building a rep as a capable leader.
And all the while, he's making connections.
Oh, yeah. The networking's key.
Big time. Especially with guys like Pompey, the general, and Crassus, super rich and influential.
Okay, so the first triumvirate. This is where things get really interesting, right?
Huge turning point for Caesar.
I mean, they weren't just sharing power. They were, manipulating the whole system to get what they wanted.
Masterful.
The original political dream team.
Uh-huh. I like that.
So this alliance helped Caesar get the governorship of Gaul.
Modern-day France, Belgium, that area,
And that's where we get the Gallic Wars.
where his military genius really showed.
But the thing is, we often hear about the victories, but our sources, they tell a brutal story.
Millions of Gauls died in those campaigns.
Billions. Makes you think about the cost of ambition, right?
Definitely, especially since these sources might give us a different cultural view on warfare.
That's a good point. And all of this is happening while Caesar's dealing with personal tragedy, too.
He loses his daughter, Julia.
Oh, yeah, she was married to Pompey, right?
Exactly, and then Crassus gets killed in Parthia.
Those are huge blows.
Not just personally, but politically, too.
Right. The triumvirate is weakened.
A power vacuum starts to form.
And that ultimately leads to the Roman Civil War.
The stage is set.
Can you imagine the tension in Rome back then?
It's been incredible.
So Caesar's facing opposition from the Senate, and he makes this huge decision
To cross the Rubicon.
with his legions, directly defying the Senate.
A declaration of war, basically.
Talk about a gamble.
Risky move, for sure.
What did the sources say about his mindset at that moment?
They describe him as determined, even defiant.
So this was a calculated risk.
He truly believed in his own destiny.
And that belief, that ambition, it leads him to victory over Pompey at Pharsalus.
A major turning point.
But victory isn't always clean, right?
Definitely not. Our sources describe the aftermath as chaotic,
Pompey flees to Egypt, gets assassinated.
and Caesar himself gets caught up in Egyptian politics.
It's like something out of a movie.
Absolutely, and this is where another major figure enters the picture.
Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt,
Her meeting with Caesar was a momentous occasion,
changed the course of history.
and that's where we'll pick up next time.
Stay with us for part 2 of our deep dive. Okay, so last time we left off with Caesar in Egypt after beating Pompey,
Right in the thick of it.
and then Cleopatra enters the picture, the Queen of Egypt herself.
It was a pivotal moment.
Not just some random historical footnote, right?
Not at all. Cleopatra was only 21,
Wow, so young.
but already a powerful ruler dealing with all sorts of challenges.
I bet she saw Caesar as a chance to, secure her power.
Exactly, and the future of her kingdom.
She was known for being smart and politically savvy.
Oh, absolutely.
This wasn't just a fling for her,
No way our sources describe their relationship as a strategic alliance.
built on mutual benefit.
Caesar wanted stability in Egypt. It was a crucial source of grain for Rome
Makes sense. And Cleopatra needed a powerful ally.
to help her stay in control.
So not necessarily the grand love story I always
Well,
imagine.
the sources do describe her as
I
captivating.
mean, I always picture her like rolled up in a carpet and all.
Haha, right? But her appeal went beyond just beauty.
Oh, I'm sure.
She was super educated, spoke multiple languages, a skilled diplomat.
So Caesar was drawn to her mind too.
Definitely her intellect and her ambition.
So they team up, and it works out pretty well for both of them.
For a while, at least, Caesar helps secure her throne, and she provides him with support.
And of course, they have a son together.
Caesarion, which adds another layer of complexity.
Right back in Rome, Caesar already had an heir,
His grandnephew Octavian.
the future Emperor Augustus,
Exactly. Imagine the scandal in Rome.
the conqueror with an Egyptian queen and a love child.
It gave his enemies in the Senate even more reason to oppose him.
They already saw him as a threat to the Republic.
His power, his victories, his relationship with Cleopatra, it all fed their fears.
And that leads to his assassination, the Ides of March.
A turning point in history.
We all know the phrase, but what was really going through the minds of those assassins?
Were they trying to save Rome, or was it something else entirely?
Good question. It's been debated for centuries.
Some historians think they were truly patriotic, afraid Caesar was becoming a tyrant.
Others say it was more about personal grudges and political maneuvering.
It's hard to say for sure.
But one thing's clear, they totally underestimated the consequences.
They thought killing Caesar would fix things, but it made everything worse.
It created this huge power vacuum.
Like a carefully balanced scale suddenly tipped over.
So Rome's in chaos. What happens next?
Well, you have Mark Antony Caesar's loyal lieutenant trying to take control.
Okay.
Then there's young Octavian Caesar's heir entering the scene.
Oh, a power struggle.
And let's not forget Lepidus, another powerful general with his own ambitions.
A three-way showdown for control of Rome?
Basically, they were all brilliant and ambitious masters of politics.
It's like Gladiator, but with togas.
Haha. In a way, their rivalry leads to the second triumvirate,
Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus join forces.
at least for a time.
Another triumvirate. Did this one have as much power as the first?
Initially, yes, they were united against Caesar's assassins.
Makes sense.
But once those enemies were gone, their alliance started to crumble.
So more of a temporary thing?
A marriage of convenience.
And what about Cleopatra? Where does she fit into all of this?
She makes a comeback, forming a strategic alliance with Mark Antony.
This wasn't just a casual thing, right?
And not at all. It was a major political move with huge implications.
They basically became a power couple.
Ruling vast territories in the East, a direct challenge to Octavian.
And Octavian used that to his advantage, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He portrayed Antony as being seduced by a foreign queen, a traitor to Rome.
Propaganda at its finest.
It worked. The rivalry ultimately led to the Battle of Actium.
That was a naval battle off the coast of Greece, right?
That's right. A decisive victory for Octavian.
He really was the last man standing, but how did he go from general to emperor?
It was a gradual process. He was smart about it.
He didn't want to be seen as another Caesar.
Exactly. He presented himself as a restorer of order, a preserver of tradition,
So he was playing the long game.
consolidating his power while maintaining the appearance of a republic.
Never.
He kept the Senate, but they had no real power.
He was pulling the strings.
And with Antony and Cleopatra out of the picture, his position was unchallenged.
So the Republic basically transformed into an empire under his rule.
A subtle but profound shift in power.
It's amazing how these things can happen gradually.
History is full of surprises. It's not always about the big dramatic events.
Sometimes it's the quiet moves that change everything.
Exactly.
So after all this, where does Caesar stand in the eyes of history? Hero, villain, something in between.
It's complicated. He was a brilliant military leader and a shrewd politician.
He expanded Rome's territory and made some important reforms.
But his ambition and disregard for tradition ultimately led to his downfall.
And paved the way for the empire.
History is rarely black and white.
It's a mix of good and bad ambition and consequence.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It forces us to think critically, to analyze motivations, to understand how things really happened.
Exactly.
So we've covered Caesar's rise and fall, the chaos that followed his assassination.
The rivalry between Antony and Octavian, and the birth of the Roman Empire.
But there's one more figure we need to talk about.
Cleopatra.
She was so much more than just a love interest.
Her story is often overlooked, but she was a force to be reckoned with.
And we'll explore her story in part 3 of our deep dive. We've spent the last two parts digging into Julius Caesar, his life, his times,
A pivotal figure for sure.
but we keep bumping into this other major player in the story.
Cleopatra.
Exactly. And I feel like she's often kind of reduced to just a love interest.
Yeah, just a footnote in Caesar's story.
But our Spanish sources paint a much more interesting picture.
Oh, definitely. She was so much more than just a beautiful queen.
So before we even get to Rome, who was Cleopatra? What kind of ruler was she on her own?
Well, she was Cleopatra the Seventh, Philopator, from a long line of Macedonian Greek rulers.
Wait, hold on. Macedonian Greek?
Yeah, they've been running Egypt since Alexander the Great. Imagine that.
A dynasty ruling a culture totally different from their own for centuries.
It's wild,
So
right?
she wasn't ethnically Egyptian.
Nope. But she was born in Alexandria and totally embraced Egyptian culture, the religion.
Interesting.
She presented herself as like the embodiment of the goddess Isis.
Oh, wow. Connecting herself to those ancient pharaohs.
Smart move politically, appealing to both sides.
She came to power young, too, didn't she?
Only 18 when she became co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy III.
Oh, boy. Sibling rivalry. Andy ruling a kingdom.
It was a tough time, lots of power struggles and schemes.
So how does this young, ambitious queen end up meeting Caesar?
Well, Caesar shows up in 48 BC, chasing Pompey after a big battle.
Right, right.
And Cleopatra, she sees a chance to make an alliance with the most powerful man in Rome.
That whole story about her sneaking in rolled up in a carpet, is that true?
Who knows, haha, but it makes for a good story.
It shows how bold she was.
Definitely. And she knew how to make an entrance.
So what was their deal? Just strategy, or was there real affection?
Our sources point to both. They had mutual respect, intellectual connection.
You were both super smart, ambitious, driven.
Exactly, a meeting of minds.
Caesar helps her become sole ruler of Egypt, and she helps him with resources, political backing,
It was a mutually beneficial arrangement,
at least for a while, and then they have Caesarion.
which throws a wrench in things. Caesar already had an heir back in Rome.
Talk about drama.
It definitely didn't help Caesar's image back home, made his enemies even more paranoid.
And then, boom, the assassination.
The Ides of March, a turning point for everyone, including Cleopatra.
What happened to her after Caesar's death?
She stayed right in the game, remember the Second Triumvirate?
Mark Antony, Octavian, Lepidus, right? Trying to avenge Caesar, but also all wanting power.
And Cleopatra saw her chance with Mark Antony. They formed an alliance too.
History repeating itself.
Except this time, it was even more intense, more scandalous.
They were a true power couple ruling a huge chunk of the East.
A direct challenge to Octavian.
And that challenge led to the Battle of Actium.
Octavian wins. It's the end for Cleopatra and Antony.
They both chose to end their own lives rather than surrender.
A tragic end to a remarkable life.
Think about it. She ruled for over 2 decades, dealt with internal struggles, Roman politics.
Always trying to keep Egypt independent in a world where Rome was taking over.
She was a total badass.
Defied expectations, proved herself a capable leader.
But she's still often remembered just for the men in her life.
It shows how history can be biased. We have to look deeper, find different perspectives.
Her story shows that women in power were just as skilled and ambitious as the men.
Absolutely.
So we've gone through Caesar's rise and fall, Cleopatra's incredible life, the Roman Republic becoming an empire.
It's been quite a journey.
What are you walking away with from all this? What surprised you?
For me, it's just how timeless these themes are. Power, ambition, love, betrayal.
They still shape the world today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope you learned something new, maybe even got a little inspired by Cleopatra.
She was a remarkable woman.
Keep exploring history, keep questioning, and keep diving deep with us.